Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of our attendees, wherever you are. Today's webinar is entitled Machine Learning as a Service on Microsoft Azure, and this is the third webinar in an introductory series. The first one was kind of a high-level overview over machine learning and deep learning and machine learning as a service, as well as AutoML, so I kind of went through all the different concepts. The second webinar, which was actually on Tuesday this week, in that webinar, we did a demo of machine learning service on Microsoft Azure using the UI. And this time, we're going to show you how to do the same with Python. All right, next slide, please, Arnold. Thank you. So this webinar is brought to you by Knut Concepts. We are a small data literacy consultancy and data science consultancy, and it's powered by T-Systems. For those of you guys who are not familiar with T-Systems, it's the enterprise customer branch of Deutsche Telekom. And Deutsche Telekom is one of the largest telecommunication companies in the world. Next slide, please. A few words about us. My name is Raphael, and today with me is Arnold. Hey, Arnold. You want to go first and tell a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Arnold here. I am basically a computer programmer by background, and I have worked extensively in C, C++, Linux, and Unix. And I have been in my career over 6 years of coding and programming and all that. I have written almost 1,000 lines of code in different languages. And personally, I have dabbled over 20 other languages. So I'm very well versed with the code. And we are working in this webinar, which we have last 2 webinars, and this we have worked very hard over it. And I think you will like it because this is the only kind of webinar where you get some really practical hands-on information about how to use Microsoft Azure. You will not find such a webinar anywhere. At least I couldn't find one.
I couldn't either, to be honest.
Yeah, Rafael.
Yeah, so my name is Raphael. I'm the CEO of Knut Concepts, and I'm the non-technical guy on the team. I would call myself a citizen data scientist. Citizen data scientist is a term that was coined by Gartner back a few years ago, and it describes business people or business managers who have some technical knowledge which they haven't acquired at school or university, but just by self-education. And so that's who I am, and Arnold is a developer, programmer who transitioned towards data science. Now, the motto of the series is that the best way to learn is by teaching others, which means that we are trying to understand the services that Microsoft is offering for machine learning, and it's a total of 40 different services that we looked into so far, and we are working with these services, and we are just learning. We're kind of sharing our learning experiences with our audience. All right, a few logistics before we get started. So this webinar is going to be 1 hour long, and the session is going to be recorded. So just in case that you would like to review it or share with your colleagues, the recording is going to be available next week, and you're probably going to need it if you want to start using Microsoft Machine Learning Service, because it's going to be a lot of stuff today, and you might want to review some sections again and just walk through them at your own pace. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those. There's a chat box. I'm going to be tracking those questions while Arnold is going to do the most part of the presentation. And after the presentation, we're going to have probably 5 to 10 minutes for a short Q&A. All right, so with that, let me hand over to Arnold. Arnold, the stage is yours. Good luck.
Thank you, Rafael. Thanks. Hi, guys. So we will start with Azure Machine Learning Service, and we have built this webinar to be very practical, very hands-on. So you will see only minimum amount of theory. Okay, so let's get on with it. Yeah, so last webinar was about this visual interface. We had drag and drop boxes. This is Azure Machine Learning's one kind of interface. Today's webinar is about notebook interface, which it looks like this Python code you can see. And The data set we are going to use is provided by Microsoft Azure, one of the sample data sets. And we have to find out the best fitted or the most accurate machine learning model that correlates factors like age, BMI, blood pressure, etc. to diabetes. This is one of the
One comment before we move on, Arnold.
yeah,
So we're gonna be showing a lot of Python code today. So
yeah,
it's certainly helpful if you are familiar with Python. However, if you are new to Python, please stay with us because it's even if you're a business user, let's say you're a data analyst, and you're mostly using spreadsheet tools and you're considering to start using Python, you're still going to learn a lot in today's webinar, even if you would need to require the foundational knowledge of Python.
yeah. Thank you, Rafael, really, for pointing that out. And also, we have not written any code by hand here. This is provided by Microsoft. And you can also go do the same step and see how you can use the notebook interface. Anyone, even a citizen data scientist like Rafael mentioned. So just stick with us on this. And this is the sample data set. You can see age, BMI, BP is the blood pressure, and different data set here. And before we start, some concepts. Azure, yeah. So Azure, one thing you have to understand, anything you want to use, you have to create a resource group first. This is Azure terminology. So I will clear out terminology as we move through each slide. And there's something called resource, which you have to create, which you can create after creating a resource group. Then on the top of that, you will create a notebook. This is how it is going to go. This is how Azure has structured its cloud services. Now, what is Notebook VM, as Azure calls it? Notebook VM is nothing. It's just a Jupyter notebook for Python. That's it. Nothing else. The name is just Notebook VM. And resource is just another name for the service. So if we are using Azure machine learning resource for the Azure machine learning service, and Azure data factory resource for the Azure data factory service. They are just simple names. And resource group is a container or collection of different resources. So whenever you create a resource, you create a resource group and you put your resource in it. Okay, how to get started? We're gonna tell you need an account. First of all, so this is azure.microsoft.com. You can see link at the bottom. And we go on the upper corner here on the upper right side, and we click on the free account. And I want to mention why we are using screenshots here. It is because creating those resources, running the machine learning modeling process, it's a very, very time consuming process. If I have to do this webinar live, it might take 3 to 5 hours, depending on how long it takes for the resources to create, for the processes to go. That is why we decided to do the screenshots here. Okay, so you click on the free account and you will get this page, and you can see here start free. You'll get this page. You have to create an account. You will get a new email address, and this is where you add your information, your phone number, and this one is identity verification by card. You have to add your credit card details. Without those details you cannot move ahead. Once you add those, you will get $200 credit in your account. And this looks like a lot of money, but it is not. As we'll progress through the webinar, you will come to know. Okay, after you add this information, you will have your account ready. And in the last part, you will come across to choose a subscription. And we have pay as you go subscription. And you can see there are other 80% savings and 72% savings, but there are subcategories in these kind of subscriptions. But you have to pay maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 years advance payment to get this cost savings. So it is not easy. You can just click on this link at the bottom I have mentioned and check out all the subscriptions they have to offer. Okay, we will log in once we have the account, and you can see the same page, azure.microsoft.com, and we click on the portal here. See, the name has changed to the account name here. After we logged in, we click on the portal. This is the Azure portal homepage. Whenever I mention let's go to home page, I am saying Azure portal homepage. That's what I mean in this the webinar. And you can see on the left side there is a pane, and this left pane you will see this is the home icon. In terminology, technically it is called home blade. Then there is all resources blade. There are so many different types of blades you can see here. And in the middle you can see here pay as you go subscription. This is what we have. All the subscriptions will be listed here. You can have as many subscriptions as you want. Each subscription is tied to one email address. Okay, and this is the technical documentation link. Anytime during the modeling process, you can come back to this home page and click on the documentation if you don't understand anything. Okay, we click on the all resources. Yeah, this is all resources homepage, and you see there are no resources to display because we have not created anything. How to create a resource? We need to create a resource group first if you want to create a resource. So we will go to resource groups blade, and this is empty as you can see. We click on create resource group. We'll get this page and we will add information. Subscription here by default we have one, so it is showing. Enter the name and choose a region. You can choose a region closest to you for the prices to be less, but there are some exceptions like I am in India, so in India, if I choose as region India, it is still costs me more than if I choose Western Europe.
One
So you
comment
can,
here. Yeah,
yeah,
one comment here, Arnold. I see that we have quite many participants who were attending the last webinars, and you might ask
yeah,
yourself, why are you showing the same things over and over again? Look, the problem is that the devil lies in the details. So these processes of creating resource group and spinning up the resources, they're very similar, but there are some very, very slight and subtle differences. So once you review the content of both webinars, you're going to see the differences, and that's very important to know, depending on how you want to utilize machine learning service, whether you want to do it through the UI or using the Python notebook.
yeah. Thanks, Rafael. Really. And you can see the resources here, and at the bottom we have this button. We will click on this. You'll get validation pass check here, and you can see the resource group name I have created and the region I have chosen, West Europe. One thing about the resource group, I have run this experiment and creation and deletion of resources many times. So sometimes resource group might differ the name. Just don't bother about it because the steps are still the same. Okay, create. We will hit the right here, and you will see the upper right corner. Like I mentioned in my previous webinar, Microsoft is not very visual about what is going in the background. So you always go into upper right corner and click on this bell icon. This is the notification panel. You will always have all the information what is going in the background or what has gone in the background. Right now resource group is created, which actually takes some 20 minutes if we have done live. We'll just go to resource groups blade again, and you can see here. Okay, this is the name, and I click on this October 18R. That is a resource group. Okay, we open the resource group. There is no resource to display. We will create one resource here. We'll go to home page, this portal home page, and click on create a resource. This is the blade. And we will come across this in the menu in the middle here. We will choose AI plus machine learning. And once you select it, you will have this machine learning service workspace. There will be similar looking machine learning studio workspace, but we are choosing machine learning service workspace, which is what you have to choose if you are working with the notebooks. So here, this is how it looks like. You can see workspace name and subscription and location, everything. You click on review and create after adding information. You can see here my workspace name and resource group which I just created. I just hit create. Like I said, go to upper right corner. It is not very visual. You see deployment in progress here. This takes another some 20 minutes or around 18 minutes or like that something. After a minute or so, you will have in the middle of the page this showing up. Now you can see it is creating 3 resources. We actually added only one. I'll come to that on the next slide. Once this is finished, on the resources homepage, you can see this. There are total 4 instead of 1. These resources you see, they are needed indirectly. Like you're working with a sample data set, so it will save it somewhere, like in this storage account. You cannot use them directly. Indirectly, they will be used. So we will click here. Okay, let's experiment with the data. Homepage, all resources blade, and you see same place we come to, and we click on this, our resource, October 18 MLS, and this is the page you get. We have 2 interfaces, notebooks and visual, and we will choose notebooks, of course. Yeah, so here on this, the middle part here, we will choose notebook VMs. And then this you see right now there is nothing, it is empty. So we will click on this, launch preview. And this is one way of going to notebook interface. There is another way which I will show up on this page here. After you go there, you will have this page, sign in. But you see on the lower left corner, I have given a link. If you just create a resource and enter this address, ml.azure.com, you will get the same page, which is a new interface Microsoft is developing. It was not there some 2 months ago. So we will sign in, and you have to choose a subscription, and see here all the buttons are deactivated. Once you choose a subscription, you have to enter machine learning workspace name, and we get started. Yes, this is a home page for everything related to Azure machine learning service. And you can see here currently there's nothing to display. There's nothing to display, everything is empty because we have not started anything. And on this part you can see there are 3 ways. This is new interface they have been developing. This is almost same as notebooks as of now, 99%. We'll choose the notebooks. This interface visual we showed up in the last webinar. So let's go to notebooks. This is one way of going to notebook, or you can go to the left menu here and select notebooks also. They both will land up to notebooks homepage, which looks like this. And if you look at this part, you can see Azure ML Gallery. This is the samples they have provided. So this is what we are going to use. So we'll click on the samples, and you can see these 3 dots will appear once you click on it. And if you click on this 3 dots here, you'll get clone and copy folder path option. You will choose clone, and a pop-up will come on the screen. It will ask you to select a target directory. When you create your account, this is the default directory you get by the name of your account, same name. So we will just choose it and clone it. And in the middle, you can see this cloning. It takes around some 4 or 5 minutes. And after it is done, you have to see this green background message, this green strip. If this doesn't appear, it means something has gone wrong. So you have to refresh the page and go do the cloning again. Once you see this, now you can see this here. We have the samples here in this directory or file, and same 1.0.69, 1.0.69. Why did we clone? Because all the sample data provided here is read only. You cannot run a model, machine learning model on top of it. You can just read it. So if you want to work with it, you have to clone it. This is the process you have to follow. So we'll click on the sample, double click it, and you will see tutorials inside. And inside tutorials, you will see tutorial first experiment SGK train .ipynb. It just means IPython notebook. This is just the extension used. Okay, this is the page you get. Now, before we land into coding and all that stuff, I will give you a little bit of introduction here. You see, this is you can shrink the pane with this, so you have more room to read. and look at the code, or you can open it back again with the button if you want. And you can see no VMs found. Now to run this notebook, you need a VM. That is what you need on Microsoft Azure service. You can see all these buttons are also deactivated. You cannot run anything. So we will create a new VM. Once you hit it on the right side, you can see this will pop up on the screen. And if you zoom into it, you have to enter a VM name. You see, once you enter VM name, you have to choose a VM type. Now, what is VM type? VM type helps you select number of CPUs, amount of memory, and amount of storage you can use. There are some 100 options here. You can choose any one depending on your data size. So I'm choosing this which is provided by default. So after you enter, I have chosen October 23 NBVM, which just means notebook VM, and I hit create. See, like I said, they are not visual. So here in the top, you will see again green strip, notebook VM creation in progress. It takes around half an hour. So for the reasons that we are not doing this live. And sometimes it crashes also. For me, I ran the experiment 20 times and it crashed twice. So another 45 minutes extra of your time. So once it is creating, after it finished, it will be running. There is no stop here or restart here. It is just running. It means you are done. So we can go back to the page here on the tutorial, and you can see here all the buttons are active now. All of these. You can save and run and everything, or you can clear the page also totally, clean it out. And if you go back to the interface homepage, and you can see there is currently nothing, no runs to display, but you see this. This is the name of the VM we created, and you can see it is succeeded. You have to check here also. If this succeeded doesn't show up here, something has messed up. So you go back, there's a 10% chance it will crash. So you better check and recheck your stuff. Okay, so we will go back to tutorial. This is the notebooks. This is the samples, and we go to tutorial first experiment SDK train. And before we get into code, I will tell you a little bit about Azure Python SDK, what it is. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand what is going on in the notebook. So SDK stands for Software Development Kit. SDK provides collection of all of the development tools in one package. This is the benefit of it. And Python SDK means all the Python development tools are available in one package, which is Azure Notebook interface in our case. And SDK is less complex, but compared to a programming language, but it has its own learning curve. It is more like learning a mini programming language. You can think you are learning a very mini version of Python language. SDK is less cross-platform than programming language itself. For example, we have Amazon platform and we have Google platform also for the cloud. And if you are running this SDK learning Azure SDK, it will not work on the Google or Amazon. But if you know Python language, it will work anywhere, all the platforms. But why should we learn SDK then? The reason is this. If you want to accomplish certain tasks, I have accomplished 2 tasks here. So you can see almost 30 lines of code. I couldn't take the full screenshot. There are maybe 40 lines of code around here for the visibility reasons. And if you talk about the accomplishing the same task which I have done on this side using Python SDK, Azure Python SDK, it only takes 3 lines of code. So less complexity. It is one layer on the top of programming language. That is why you should learn SDK. All right. So what is Jupyter Notebook? We are mentioning notebook over and over again. It is a web-based interactive computational environment. You execute code or your program in the web browser, and web browser essentially replaces the command line or terminal or the black screen you must have seen many programmers using, where terminal keeps on blinking or mouse cursor. And both text and code are included. This is one benefit of using notebook. Generally, when we on command line, when we use, we cannot include text all the time whenever we want. So yes, in Azure SDK, this whole machine learning model process is 5 step. We connect to the workspace we just created in the previous steps. Then we create an experiment, and experiment means the same thing. It's Azure terminology for machine learning model or machine learning process. We prepare the data, we will train the model, and we will view the results and interpret the results. These are the 5 steps. We will go one by one. Okay, connect to workspace. This is the page, this is a tutorial that we opened, and you can see here this code. You see 2 lines from import, you can see, and next lines is just workspace, which is WS here. And you can see this is empty square brackets here. Now see, let us talk about it. This is how the code looks like. It will connect to the workspace you have created automatically. You do not need to name here right now. And once you have to double click this cell, or we call it cell, wherever you see the code, and press shift plus enter, then the code will run. This is the way of running it. And once the code is running, this is first line of code we are running. You can see here it will perform authentication. So you will get this link here, and you have to enter that code in that link. So we will open the link. This link will open up in a new tab. It won't disturb the current page we are working on. And this is what you will see. You will enter your code here, and you have to select your account. Even though it is one account, it will still show you like this. So we will select it, and you can see, just you may now close this window. Authentication has happened, and in the real time, in the older tab, you can see this appearing. This is all happening on one time, a real time. Now we look at this line, 2 lines of code completely. This is how it started, and we press shift plus enter, and this is what it came, and you can see square brackets, and you can see a star here. What is the meaning of this star here? The star means this code is running, so please don't do anything else. This is what the star means. Once the code has finished running, you will see a number appearing here. Number means this is third line of code. I have already run many times, so 2 times I've already practiced this, so it should be number 1 technically, but it is number 3 because I was running experiment and taking screenshots. So you have to remember this. Once you see this star, you must not run this code again or go to next block and start running it. It will give you errors, may crash your notebook. Okay, second step is create an experiment or create a machine learning model. What we do here, you see this, same from import and then 1 line of code experiment. Everywhere you see this, we will import something and we will do 1 line of code here. Okay, this Azure ML.core is the Azure machine learning SDK, notebook SDK we are using. You can see WS is the name of workspace we created in the previous line of code. This is the name we gave, diabetes experiment. And once this code has run, and you can see it is line number 4 of the code. Now we will prepare the data. Now this is machine learning modeling. I will like to tell you a little bit about here. Normally how we do machine learning modeling is, whenever we model, we have to know the accuracy of our model. When I say model, when I say algorithm, they are one and the same thing. In machine learning world, we call it a model. In computer programming world, we call it algorithm. This is a pre-built model, or all the models are pre-built. You do not have to create them by hand. And we train the model on 80% of the data. Always do training on 80%. 20% of the data we will never touch. We just leave it as it is, and we will use it after our machine learning model is done with the finishing all this process. We can then compare the results, how much accurate are our results for 80% of the data by comparing it with the untouched 20% of the data. This is the machine learning modeling process. It's very common, and you can say this is 20% we will never touch, and this is where we will run our experiment on 80% of the data. We are going to use ridge regression here. In our previous webinar, we used linear regression, and I want to tell regression means we use it when we are dealing with a number here. So what are we doing here? Ridge regression, why not something else? What happens when you're running linear regression? You run it for those models where there is a very clear connection between what you want to find out and what is available. So in our case, the BMI and blood pressure and diabetes. Diabetes is what we find out how much is the connection with the diabetes. And there is no medically established fact there is any connection between the BMI, BP, and diabetes. When we are not sure of the connection, nothing is proved, we use ridge regression model. When we already have a good connection, good actually correlation established, like in our previous webinar, we wanted to predict the price of a car depending on the number of cylinders, its fuel type, its length and the width and the power and the HP. That is pretty much well established that the most powerful of the car, more powerful, the higher the price it will be. So that is why we use linear regression there. But for these kind of things where there is no correlation established, we use ridge regression. Okay. Once we run the model, we will get some values, which you will see, and then we'll mash those values with rest 20% of the data, like I mentioned. Sometimes 70% and 30% train test model is also used, depending on the person or depending on the experiment or model. Okay, this is what we see, how we split the data into 80% and 20%. And you can see again to from import. And you can see this here, train test split. Simple line.
Just one comment here for our audience.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to make it very, very clear that you don't have to write this code. All this code is available once you clone the notebook. And that's why we are going over this code rather quickly, just to give you kind of a high level picture of what is it that you got into in your Azure Notebook. And that's also what experienced machine learning service users recommend, that you always should start with those pre-built notebooks. Just look into them and see how they're working inside. And once you're familiar with those, only then you should start using your own Azure Notebooks.
Yeah, thanks, Rafael. So you can see here test size is 0.2, which means 20%. It will automatically pick up the 80% for training. And you see this empty and becomes number 5 after the run is finished. Okay. Now we will train the model. How do we train it? This is larger line of code I'm showing you here. Let me explain a bit. This code is a mix of Python code and the SDK code. And no need to get confused over why there is so much things here. Some things are happening which I will explain. This is, you see, model is a rich model, like I told you. It is using something called alpha. Rich model always uses something called alpha. Now what is alpha? It is just this number of values, which shows there are 10 values here. We are going to run this model 10 times. I can add 1.1, 1.2, also make it 20 times till 2.0, but that's up to you. And you see for alpha in alphas, this is just running in loop. This is Python loop. It is not from the SDK. And you can see model.predict. Here we are running it 10 times. We will have 10 predictions. That's what we have, and we'll compare them. And you can see import math here, which is a Python library. And you can see this here in the second last line. Okay, run upload file. This is actually SDK code. You do not have to type it, like Rafael has mentioned. It's all available. Now you can see here it is empty. I haven't run it. And after run, you see that number 6 has appeared. Our code has been executed, and it takes around some 15-17 minutes, this line of code. And after it is done, we have to type this and run it once, experiment. It's already there. So after it is run, you will see this here, number 7 has appeared, and at the bottom, you will see this diabetes experiment, the report page, and link to documentation. If you want to read what has happened, you can go to the documentation and read it. It will tell you what each line of code has done or each import has done. Now we will go to Azure portal link to see the results. Yes, it is done. This is how simple it is. If you're running an experiment which is provided by them, a machine learning model, there are almost 6 samples they have provided, and there are more complicated ones, and you should do the easier one first, like Rafael has mentioned already. Okay, view results, and we click on the link, we get this page, and you can see here all the prediction models are completed, 10 of them. If something is not completed, you gotta rerun it. That's you have to do. There's no help actually around it. And now we have 10 different runs of the model. Now, which one is the best or most accurate prediction? How do we know? For that, I have to tell you one statistical metric called root mean squared error, or RMSE in short. It's a statistical metric for comparing accuracy. And there are almost 10 different actually metrics are there. Why we are using RMSE? Because when we run a same model data set we are using and run 10 different runs on it, then we use root mean squared error, statistically speaking, mathematically speaking. And this error will tell you the difference between the values predicted by those models, those 10 runs, and the actual values, which are in 20%. And since this is an error, root means squared error, the lesser the value it has for a particular run out of those 10, the more accurate that run is. Now let's look at them closely. Now you see all 10 of them, and this is RMSE here, root mean squared error. And you can see the first run had the least error, so it was the most accurate run. And it took the largest amount of time also. You can see 10 seconds compared to 2 seconds there or 1 second there above. And how do we get the results? Now we know this is the value. Now out of those 10 runs, what do we do with it? Every run is saved with an ID number. We have to get that ID. It is saved on the storage on Microsoft Azure storage structure, and we have to pull the file. How do we do that? This is the code, and you can see this is actually almost pure Python code, almost 90% of it. And once you run it, you can see this run ID here, and you can see the root mean squared error also, 57.23 at the bottom. And once we have this, we can pull the file, and for the file which is saved, you just import it and you just get the file name. And you can see this is the name of the file. Now we will download the file for a certain purpose, which I will explain in upcoming slide. This is the way you download file. Simple one line of code. And where does it go? Same notebooks, and this was your sample folder which you cloned, and there is tutorial where we ran, and you can see here model alpha 0.1.pkl. This file, now what we will do with it, this is the first run of the model, which is the most accurate model. What we do with this, we use it to deploy as a web service. Now how do we do that? Azure provides HTTP or Azure Web Service, and AKS, which is Azure Kubernetes Service for web deployments. So which are totally another topic, how to deploy them on the web. So to give you an idea, AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, costs you minimum $1,000 a month, because you will put this model on the web, and anybody with an address to it can access it and download it and use it in their software. That is how simple and straightforward it is. Now Before we go, you think it's finished. No, we have to clean up the resources because these resources are running and they cost a lot if you just let them run. So four things you have to note after your modeling process is done. You have to stop the notebook VM. Then you have to delete all the resources. You have to remove or delete all the resource groups. And then you have to recheck. These four steps, you should follow them religiously. And I'm speaking from experience here. See, I haven't mentioned stop the notebook VM and I have mentioned delete the notebook VM. You can't. You have to stop it first. If you try to delete it, it may not go. It may look like it has gone, but it will not. It will be running in the background and it won't be visible. So you stop it first. You go to all resources Azure portal homepage, and a bit of surprise here. Earlier we created one resource, you can see, and you saw 4. Now you can see 9. Yeah, this is a surprise from Azure. They just appear when you created your notebook or experimenting with it. This is what it happens. So you have to remove all of them. But before that, we will stop our notebook which is running. So we'll click on this resource. This is what we created. And you get to this page and we'll click on the notebook here in the middle menu. And you see this will appear. And the status is running. This is the name. You can check the name also. And we'll just select it with mouse, this line, and you can see stop. It is stopping. Stopping takes around like 12 minutes in my case. And once it is stopped, then you can select it again and delete it, selecting this delete button. And you'll get a pop-up and you select it and it is deleting, which takes another 18 minutes, so total half an hour this process takes. And while it is going on, those half an hour you will be charged for running the notebook VM on your credit card. But this is how it goes. After it is done, it will be empty. Then you can go back to all resources on the portal homepage and you click on here, check this box out, and everything will be selected. And you can hit the delete button. On the right corner, this will pop up. And you can see here, the delete button is deactivated. So you have to type yes in this box here. Unless you type yes, it won't delete anything. Once you type yes, delete will activate, the button at the bottom. And you select delete. And like I said, it is not that visual. So notification panel, the bell icon, upper right corner. You see execute delete command. It takes around half an hour. Another, half an hour for the notebook, half an hour for this, 1 hour. And it will change to execute treat delete command. And you have to really check this because this check will always be green. But this succeeded 10 and failed 0. It could be, in my case, one time it was succeeded 6, failed 4. But this check was green only. This didn't show red or anything to me. So sometimes it was just succeeded 9 and failed 1. So you have to go back to all resources and delete it again. Yes, you have to do that. It happens sometimes. Now, once you have to check the resource groups after you deleted the resources. And you can see another surprise here. We created one resource group and you see 2 here. I never created this in this webinar or even while working. It just appears. I chose October 24 RG, and RG is also added here as a postfix, but I never created it. So you gotta delete them both. Yes, so I'll show you one. You just click on it and you go to this resource group homepage and you delete the resource group. Again, the right side pop-up will show, and this time you have to type the resource group name here. Typing yes will not delete it. So you have to enter the whole name. October 24 RG, like you can see I have added, and then delete button is activated. Again, you go to the right side, notification panel, deleting resource group takes around 20 minutes, 15 minutes or something. Once it is done, deleted resource group. Same you do for the other group. And you should recheck. There is no resource group to display should be there. You really have to check. All right, this is all about it. I went through a little bit quicker, but this is pretty much easy. Rafael, back to you if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Arnold. It was a great presentation. I enjoyed it a lot, especially the deletion part,
Yeah.
because we learn it the hard way if you don't follow those steps. If you don't really understand how to terminate the services, you're going to pay for them, and it might be pretty hefty. I mean, it happened to us a couple of times that we were charged even a couple $100, and we were just unaware how come we terminated, the resource as well. You haven't terminated the resource group. How do you terminate the resource group? So it's a little bit tricky, but it's good knowing those things. It spares you a lot of pain and saves you a lot of money.
Okay, Rafael, I have one question coming.
Yeah, sure.
It says that I have read in Microsoft as a documentation, if you delete the resource group, all the resources related to that group are deleted. So why are we deleting resources manually one by one? Okay. The reason is that it is true, according to documentation, practically also. Once you delete a resource group, all the resources in that resource group are deleted automatically. That works 99.9% of the time. I have created and deleted resources and resource groups, experimented, run models, maybe more around 100 times in this whole month, almost every day. One time it failed. I deleted the resource group, resources did not go, one resource was still there. And if you just leave it that and you do not recheck it, just like Rafael mentioned just now, it may cost you a couple of $100. That's hard way to know. So I tell people to remove resources first. Like we mentioned, this is spectacle webinar. So I don't want somebody to get charged, out of just a little bit of ignorance. Yeah.
Yeah. We got very good questions, which I already answered while you were presenting, Arnold. Nonetheless, I would like to shed some lights on a few questions. Um, First of all, one question which I liked a lot is, can you connect with Anaconda or from your local instance of Anaconda to Microsoft Azure? I can take this question, Arnold. So I think it's important to understand in the first place, why are we doing this? Why are we even using Microsoft machine learning service? Now, the big difference is if you are familiar using Anaconda, and let's say you use it for let's say learning purposes, so you're participating in Kaggle competitions or you're taking certifications and you're working with relatively small amounts of data, then it's perfectly fine to use Anaconda locally on your laptop. However, Microsoft Machine Learning Service is specifically built for enterprise use cases. So let's make the assumption that you have an application that is being used by 50,000 or 60,000 users, and you want to inject machine learning predictive models into that application. How do you do that? You can't do that locally from your laptop, right? It just doesn't work in a corporate enterprise environment. And so that's where Microsoft Azure shines, and that's the reason why everything is in the cloud. You don't have any resources locally on your laptop, right? So your notebook is in the cloud, your data is in the cloud, all the policies are in the cloud, everything's in the cloud. And Microsoft Machine Learning Services leverages a lot on Kubernetes, which is a framework which is specifically built for deploying or using containers at scale. So that's the big difference. So it depends on your use case. If you just want to learn the very basics of, let's say, scikit-learn, you're probably better served if you use Anaconda. However, if you want to understand how you can actually work with machine learning at scale, then certainly it makes sense to take a closer look into Microsoft's machine learning service.
Rafael, can I
Yeah,
add to
sure.
this question?
Yes, please add.
Yeah, so one thing you can do in Anaconda itself, because Anaconda runs on libraries. Microsoft Azure has made available its libraries. They are open source. All the Azure machine learning service library, notebook libraries here, what we used, available for you to download also from GitHub. But you have to remember one thing, why I never used it. Because once you use that library, the process, the background process is same. It will create a workspace on the Azure cloud after authentication. Then how will you delete those resources? Definitely not from an Anaconda notebook. You cannot do that. You have to go back to web interface and do it. So be careful if you want to use it that way. Just remember there's something running in the background and your credit card is being charged for it. Okay. Yeah, Rafael, that's
Yeah,
about it.
thanks, Arnaud. Thanks.
Yeah.
Another question is about, sorry.
It's okay.
Another question is about well, it's a free service, so why should I select a subscription plan? Well, the thing is that you're not being charged for creating an account. You get $200 of credit. I'm not sure if that's globally available or might be a little bit different depending on the region in which you're located. However, once these resources are used up, you're going to be obviously charged for the services that you're utilizing and consuming. Always bear in mind that um, it's a whole infrastructure in the background that you can leverage and use, starting from very small data sets up to terabytes or petabytes of data that might be using. Let's say you are working for a hospital and you have tons of medical data and you want to make sense of that data. Let's say you have patient records and you want to figure out, just as we did in this webinar, who are the webinars based on the data that you have who are most likely to develop diabetes, right? If you want to do that at scale, you should definitely do that on Microsoft Azure or a like-minded service. And it comes with a price. And there's been a lot of buzz over the last 2 years about cloud price wars and that vendors are lowering their prices. However, if you start using those services, you're going to quickly realize they're very, very expensive. And if you set up an account and you exhaust those $200 credits, anything that goes beyond that, you're going to be charged for that. And like I said earlier, we learned it the hard way. You will not find any webinars out there that are very specific about how to delete and terminate all the resources so that you will not be charged. You will find webinars on actually how to use the services. Microsoft is very happy to provide you that information, but we find that you, as a user, as a customer, you should always also know how to actually terminate the resources so that you actually don't have any further expenses. And it's very important to understand the whole cycle. Any additions to that, Arnold?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say is, like you have mentioned, Rafael, that if you want to scale, you definitely want to use this. Now, I want to tell everyone that 55% people who are coming into data science, all the employees in any corporation, 55% of them are not from software development background. They are either from mathematics, statistics, or business or marketing, or from different backgrounds. Now, for all those people, I cannot expect them to learn a programming language and become fluent in it. And SDK is like learning a small mini language. It's much easier, much lesser learning curve, and anybody can just start using it. And all of the companies are interested in solving their problems. So yeah, if I am the person and I'm a computer programmer, I'm a hardcore programmer myself, and I still think if really anybody wants to try it out, they should definitely give it a try. Yeah, Rafael.
Yeah, makes perfectly sense. Well, I think that's it for now. We don't have any further questions from the audience. And let me just check. Oh, is one question popping in right now? No.
Okay.
So I don't know. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone joining us today. For those of you guys who joined us a little bit earlier and missed the introductory part, this webinar is being recorded. It's the last webinar in a series of 3 covering the very basics of machine learning as a service and AutoML in the first webinar. The second webinar was about how to set up your first experiment on Microsoft Azure Machine Learning Service using their drag and drop UI. And this webinar was about how to do the same or almost the same using Python SDK and Azure Notebooks. We will send out an email within the next few working days with the URLs to all 3 webinars. And should you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're going to help answer the questions as good as we can. And have a great day, have a great evening, and see you soon. Goodbye.